You guys remember Christina from last year, right? She's brunette hair, kind of straight. She's a very good person.
Thank you.
She's the brains of the outfit. Don't tell her I said that. Christina's put her on mute.
Ron, are you in an RV?
I'm in an RV waiting to go. I'm in an RV waiting to go walleye fishing, folks.
Right on.
All right, so we are live.
Perfect. Mr. Albert, you have the floor, my friend.
All right, let's stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sounds like we're at a baseball game. We're gonna echo there.
All right, Twilight, attendance, please.
All right, roll call. Counselor Albert.
Here.
Counselor Colby.
Here.
Counselor Ganong.
Here.
Counselor LaRochelle.
Here.
Counselor Ward.
Here.
Counselor Lund.
Here.
Counselor Fellows.
Here.
Okay. Next item is good news and recognition.
Anybody got anything that we will present tonight? Hearing crickets, let's move on.
Next item, since there are no public hearings, would be audience participation and response for agenda items. Those
Have we received anything? I had no emails as of
Same here, no emails.
next item then, Twilight.
All right, is the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are considered to be routine and will be considered for adoption by one motion with no separate discussion unless the council requests an item to be removed from immediate discussion. Any council wishing to remove an item may do so now. Seeing none. Order 20-2090 to approve the municipal accounts payable warrants for $120,111.73. The municipal payroll warrants for $135,895.46. The school accounts payable for $54,118.85. The school payroll warrants for $7,246. Along with the minutes of April 28, 2020, and May 5, 2020. And to set a public hearing on June 2 for a victuals license for Antonio Brigio doing business as Roadside Barbecue at 73 Lisbon Street. And to set a public hearing for June 2 for the special entertainment permit for Frank's, and to make a personnel policy amendment to section 9037 holiday schedule, which if approved under the consent agenda changes our Columbus Day holiday to Indigenous Peoples Day to comply with LD 179 as approved by the governor.
Make the motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please, Twilight.
Roll call, Counselor Albert.
Yes.
Counselor LaRochelle.
Yes.
Counselor Ward.
Yes.
Counselor Lund.
Yes.
Counselor Ganong.
Yes.
Counselor Colby.
Yes.
Counselor Fellows.
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays, order passed.
Next, Twilight.
Under council orders, resolutions, and ordinances, order 2020 number 91, the audit presentation.
Ron, is it you or Christina going to be doing the presentation?
Christina's gonna do, go over around the financial, and we're just gonna talk a little bit. I told her I'd help out with just some of the details, for lack of a better way to say it, for 19 and some of the struggles and what we've done and where we're at right now, so.
Okay, to set the stage associated with that, I appreciate you guys sending the information you've already seen. A lot of this is for the listening public that we're actually taping for right now to give you the opportunity to present those in public, so I appreciate you guys taking the time to do so. And also on that for reaching out to us for the coming year as you did. So thank you for that, and thank you guys for your time tonight.
Sure thing. Christina, go ahead, take it from here.
All right, I'm going to start out. So Ron said that we're just going to do a fairly quick overview, but if you guys have any questions that jump out to you, just let me know and we can go.
We'll spend as long as you guys need on this Zoom call here. I just told Christina to hit the highlights. So.
Okay,
Appreciate
I'm
it.
assuming that everybody has access to the financial statement, jumping around a lot.
They've all seen them, Christina, so go right
Go
ahead.
ahead, just go through them, Christina. Hit the highlights.
All right. So the town received an unmodified opinion, which means that we believe the financial statements are fairly reported in all material respects. And this is what you want. That's the sort of opinion that is great for you guys. In addition,
It's the highest one we can get.
right. In addition, we also did the federal compliance audit, and you also received a unmodified opinion for that. We had tested the wastewater program on the town side this year. So turning over to the financial statements on statement C, which is on page 20 of the financial statements. This year, there's a different presentation of the financial statements, and we're hoping that it's going to be easier for you guys to read on your end. It's pulling apart the general fund for the town versus the education fund for the school. So now when you look at the town general fund, that's just solely, information that you guys control. And it's just the town's general fund, balance sheet, revenues, and expenses. Another change from this past year is that you guys ended up reclassing things that you had previously done as fund balances in the general fund for special revenues and capital projects. Those things were pulled out and restated and have been brought over to their own separate schedules in the way back financial statement.
And there are things like you guys, like capital projects, some replacement reserves, some other special monies and earmarks, that you guys are carrying forward that we just decided because of the uniqueness and the earmarks. Let's pull them out of your general fund because they really had nothing to do with your general fund.
Right. So all that information gets rolled into that other governmental funds, which is on statement C. So then if you look at statement C down towards the bottom on the left-hand side under the general fund, you have your unassigned fund balance, and that's what everybody's always curious about. So right now, you guys at the end of 2019 had about $2.5 million, and that translated into about 2 months of your operating expense budget, and we would consider that to be a healthy fund balance.
You're up about 5 days over last year, you guys. I think that's good. You're at 60 days. That's healthy for the town of Lisbon for sure. So you actually a little less than 60 days last year.
Yeah. So then on statement E, which is on page 22, this just has the revenues and expenses for all the funds. And in particular, I just sort of wanted to highlight that overall, the general fund balance went down, but it only went down about 5%. And in total, all these governmental funds actually had an increase of about 22%.
And one, just so you're sitting in your chair, you just heard her say, well, your unassigned fund balance went up. How could our fund balance go down? Because you spent a lot of your restricted money and, projects that were earmarked, that got spent in 19. That's why your totality of fund balance went down, but your actually unassigned went up. And it went up for reasons like your excise tax collections were stronger. You didn't spend as traditionally as you don't all your money and expenses. That lapses and rolls back forward. So, but all your earmarks, the reason why your totality of fund balance went down is because you spent a lot of your earmarks in 19. But your unassigned fund balance actually went up, because of those two big things. Excise tax collections were strong by about 125 grand, and you returned some expenses back to the bottom line. I think that was over 250, 300,000. So.
Yeah.
Anybody who doesn't remember, for the new seated council, there was a pretty heavy-hitting list of things that we were looking to tackle in 2019.
And you did.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that you guys did, if I recall, is that you actually decided to pay off debt ahead of schedule. And I think that was like $300,000 in itself. So that's like another reason why. But just sort of jumping on what Ron was saying for the revenues and expenses, if you go to page 91, there's schedule 1, and this has your budget to actual for the town's general fund. And you did have some overdrafted accounts, but not very many. And then on page 92 is Schedule 1A. So this is the education fund. So when we're talking about the front, how we pulled out education versus the general fund, you can now look at the town's budget separate from the education fund too. So that's really helpful. And then if we jump to page 109, We have the schedules for the capital projects, special revenues, and trust funds. So that's where that information that used to be in the general fund now resides. We pulled it over to the special revenue and capital project funds. And if you were to go further into your financial statements, there's a breakout of all those funds, like one had mentioned earlier. And I think that was sort of all the highlights I had planned to get to. Did you guys have any questions in particular, or should we just let Ron move forward?
Anything that's not in the presentation that you didn't already cover on
The biggest thing, Alan, just going back in summary, you know, two big things to take away from 19. It was a tough transition year. Diane lost her finance officer, you know, before the year, you know, had to get replaced in the year. You went through the Munis conversion. That was brutal. You know, you're still dealing with Munis issues. And then we huddled up with the school, you all, you know, about reconciling with the school that's been, you know, problematic in the past. And I think that those details are working out. Pre-pandemic, we had a meeting planned, and unfortunately that kind of got squashed. But we're on top of it. We're out in front of it in 2020, and we don't expect to see the Munis problems. But I'll tell you, there's still some Munis struggles for sure. Diane's here; she can attest to that. But it was a tough transition year. But at the end of the day, Alan, I really think that you know, we didn't miss any deadlines. You know, and I think that that's important. I think hands off to, you know, hats off to all hands on deck here. The town of Lisbon and Christina and everybody there, they made it all work, and again, didn't miss any deadlines. So,
Diane, from Kayla's perspective, is she good with the pass off for actually next year not having to go through that same process again?
Yeah, we definitely
coming up on that sooner than later.
Yeah, we're definitely in a better position. And we are right now working on reconciling with the school. We're starting a spreadsheet and we're going through month by month.
Yeah, and that's important. And like I said, that became a lost part last year. I mean, everybody had their obstacles, school included, you know, last year. And I think we all acknowledge, you know, what needs to be done. And it's just getting to it. And I think that we're out in front of it, as Diane said this year. I really do.
No, that's good, because one of the things that I would use for an observation is you guys came in, you never saw the worst of it associated with the former relationship with the school department. But we have a good thing going. So anything that you're doing for that, we rely on you, because the business partner relationship between us and the school, it just helps. For that one reason alone, is to be able to get what you need coming out of this for everything, for where we stand on fund balance, to submitting the state reports, and all of that. Is the fact that it's a lot of missed energy when we don't have strong relationship between the two.
And I'll tell you, Alan, those are strong. I think it's as strong as it's ever been. Diane can certainly attest to it, you know. But we've definitely worked hard to improve the line of communication across the hallway, you know, as I call it. And there's been a lot of hard work on everybody's part here to really step up, you know, and realize we're all on the same team. And I think it's been showing, you know, for at least the past 2-3 years, you know, at least the effort for sure. So.
I'd like to also say that we couldn't have gotten through this audit without the help of Ron and all of his staff. It was incredible. It was very challenging to lose a finance director who was also in charge of the unit implementation, and then to take over after that and get everything situated. We really couldn't have done it without Ron's help. And I want to thank you for that.
Absolutely.
That's what we're here for. We're all on the same team. So.
Anybody have any questions of Ron or Christina, guys? Seeing none, I thank you guys for your time. If you want to dismiss, by all means, I appreciate you joining us tonight for the public part of it, to be able to present. Thank you.
Everybody be well.
Thank you.
Drive safe. All right, file up 2 again.
Right, order 2020-92, James Carville, doing business as Riverside Flea Market, the itinerant vendor or outdoor flea market permit. It's up for renewal.
Make a motion for discussion.
Second.
You got your first, you got your second file?
Yes.
Question, Vern?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, does the permit as far as for the flea market, is that fall under any mass gathering or anything that's being concerning the size at this level? I guess my question, are we able to give the permit at this point in time? Is there anything statewide that's not allowing us to? Just a question, that's all.
Who wants to take a stab at that? Because I have a follow-up question similar to Vern's. If he's not able to actually meet whatever minimum from the governor associated with that, is there something we can do to actually either accommodate or refund that permit in his case?
Good question. I mean, I don't know what the restrictions are. I would imagine the same restrictions on outside venues as inside, so whatever those restrictions are. When the plan is starting up, that's the key too.
His permit is July 1, right, Twyla?
I'm not aware that he has anyone down there at the moment.
Okay. It's going to be hard enough associated with that, but to Vern's point, if somebody, is he looking at anybody that potentially could come in and shut him down, to be able to address that from the mass gathering part of it?
The question I have is, I believe that if we want technicalities, call the DECD might get a better answer on that, because there could be some restriction of 10 people or more, or 6 feet apart, or whatever.
Yeah, and I prefer not to highlight the problem that's already going to be pointed out by somebody else, but I'd really like to actually represent Mr. Carvel's interest in this, because it's going to be hard enough for him to actually do business this coming year.
I have no problem with the permit. I would just want to make sure that as
we're representing,
if we're actually issuing the permit and we're signing off as far as for codes and the police and our municipality, that we actually are making sure that he's following the guidelines that we're actually need to follow. That's all. So I mean, maybe just an honest discussion with him to see if he's actually taking anything into account, or if he's going to change. If we have on record that he's actually making the adjustments necessary, and maybe even for the July opening, changing of, because it does go from 10 to, I mean, even outdoors events goes to a little bit larger. And, 50 in July. So I know that place can get pretty hectic at times. I mean, on a nice sunny Saturday afternoon, you can see lots of people there, but I would hate to stop anybody from able to do business. So I was just curious, as a council, what responsibility we have to actually make sure that that's followed correctly.
Can I ask a friendly amendment to the motion, is that point be addressed, that we represent both Mr. Carvel's interests and that he's actually complying with the restrictions that are in place to make sure that it is in compliance? I have a first and a second. The first on that was who's Twyla?
Yeah, Vern. Councilor.
Would you be in agreement with the friendly amendment to be able to make sure that both points are known?
Absolutely, and as long as we as a community are actually making sure that he's aware and that we are, somewhat. I just don't know how we police it if once you give him a permit, if it actually gets to be, kind of a big scenario. But as long as actually the concerns are addressed and we're following the guidelines the state gives us, I have no problem with that.
And those are the key points. The second on that was who's Twyla?
Don Fellows, did you want to second the amendment?
I'll second the amendment.
All right.
Any other questions on the topic, guys? Seeing none, I guess roll call.
Okay, Councilor Albert?
Yay.
Councilor Rochelle?
Yes.
Councilor Ward?
Yes.
Councilor Lunt?
Yes.
Councilor Ganong?
Yes.
Councilor Colby?
Yes.
And Councilor Fellows?
Yes.
So 7-0 on the amendment to the main motion to approve the license, representing both the town of Lisbon and Carville, and with the stipulation that he's complying with any restrictions in place by the state. So we vote on the main motion as amended.
Correct.
Okay. Are you ready for a roll call? Councilor Albert? Counselor LaRochelle,
Yes.
Counselor Ward,
Yes.
Counselor Lund,
Yes.
Counselor Ganong,
Yes.
Counselor Colby,
Yes.
and Counselor Fellows.
Yes.
So 7-0, order passed.
Next one.
Order 2020-93, the COVID-19 Emergency Supplement Funding Grant.
Good evening. So the police department has the opportunity to apply for a federal grant that's designed to help law enforcement agencies in addressing safety concerns with COVID-19. So if approved by the council, what we would like to do with the police department is apply for personal protective kits for every officer. So we're looking at 18. It'd be 14 for full-timers and 4 for reserves. Basically, the kits come in a bag. They have a protective suit for all the officers. They have protective masks, boots, and gloves. And the actual suits and the whole kit has been approved by the National Institute for Occupational Safety, and they're designed specifically for law enforcement. And we would like the opportunity to apply for those and pick those up for our officers. It's a sorry, I should have said this, it's a non-matching grant.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion for discussion.
I'll second that discussion.
Okay, first and second. Questions, Chief?
Chief, I think it's awesome. I think anything we can get is better than not. The question is there an expiration on those kits, or is that something that's only good for so long?
They are good for 10 years, sir. Thank you for bringing that up.
My question is less about the grant, Chief, but the 2 minutes for the listening public that may be listening to this from your perspective. How are things proceeding locally?
It's going well, to be honest with you. You know, we took the first month there. We weren't making a lot of proactive stops. We were being very cautious with our distance. Gave us some time to get some personal protective equipment, some masks, some more gloves, some obviously disinfectants. And we've had time to kind of retool and get all the protective equipment that we can for now. And we're just actually getting back into proactive law enforcement again. So you should be seeing our cruisers be much more involved downtown. But knock on wood, everybody's pretty much listening to what the rules of the game are for right now, and the officers are doing well.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions of Chief, guys? Seeing none, roll call, please, Tavala.
All right, Counselor Fellows,
Yes.
Counselor Colby,
Yes.
Counselor Ganong,
Yes.
Counselor Lund,
Yes.
Counselor Ward,
Yes.
Counselor LaRochelle,
Yes.
and Counselor Albert.
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays, order passed.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Don't feel that you have to actually sit through the rest of this, Chief. I appreciate your time tonight. As for the staff reports, I read the report. I thank you for speaking to that for your presentation in the community. So thank you for everything you guys do.
Outstanding. Thank you very much to all of you.
Have a good night.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I just wanted to say that my next background for the next meeting is going to be him on a horse, the chief on a horse, so. I hope you'll look
You're not having a laugh. What's the story?
Well, he knows what it is, you'll see.
Okay.
I thought I had asked for all those to be destroyed, but
Not happening.
Those pictures never get destroyed, sir. You know that. Next item, John.
Order 2020-94, the Community Development Block Grant Housing Assistance Application.
All right, Brad, you're up.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to share this project. This is the second Community Development Block Grant application that we'll submit to the state of Maine. It is in support of Realty Resources and their operation at the Farwell Mill. They have some long-term maintenance needs. It's an old structure, so they're working on some upkeep. And more importantly, they're looking to convert commercial space into 14 additional affordable housing units for Lisbon residents. It's largely a project that will be managed by Realty Resources. Private entities cannot apply for CDBG funds, and so we would apply on their behalf as a sub-grantee. The town does not have any match requirement, and we would have a reasonable placeholder for any administrative costs that would arise. It's a competitive program. The last we saw, there were 8 projects that had been submitted. I think, with all grants, it can be hit or miss, and sometimes you can be very successful simply by showing up with an application. This year, it's going to be competitive, and so even though the ask is for a full $1 million, and we hope that we're awarded a full $1 million, the odds are it might be less than that. So, but we want to work with Realty Resources. We had a nice meeting over there with Deb Johnson, who runs the Office of Community Development at DECD, a number of their investors that you saw on the budget sheet, including a gentleman from Maine State Housing. So there's industry support for what they're trying to do at Farwell, and we want to support the mission to create affordable housing for Lisbon residents. So that's the general overview of the application.
I'll take a motion. Thank you. I need a second.
A second.
Okay, question.
Hey, Brad, thank you for bringing this up. A lot of good information. Seeing the layout of the 15.5, 68, 349, it's a big project. If that $1 million was not come in from there, is that going to hold them back, or are they just going to regroup the project to be a little bit leaner?
That's a great question. I do not have an answer for that. I think they've got some opportunities to plug that hole. And my assumption is that they're probably have all of their needs baked into this budget, and that if they weren't able to get that full funding, there may be some work that they can defer for a year or two. But there is a important point to make, and that is if the town was awarded funding on behalf of Realty Resources, there's a project development phase that could last up to 6 months, where much more due diligence will be done and a deeper dive on the budget, the background, some of the subcontractors who would be doing the work, making sure that there's compliance with the Bacon Davis wage platform. So this is the first step into what would probably be a much deeper dive on some of that due diligence. And those are the type of questions that we would want to flesh out to make sure that if the town was managing this grant and was in some way or any way on the hook for the deliverable, that we were in a position to make sure that it was either going to get done or that we were protected from any shortcoming.
Another question? Control?
Is that, Mr. Chair?
No, go for it, Don.
Is that renovation planned for the first floor commercial spaces? Is that what they're talking about?
That's the conversion. Yep, that's the big part of it. I believe they have some roof that needs some repair. There's some brick pointing that needs to be done. So it's an old mill. I've walked through it a couple times with the project team, and they put a lot of good work into it. The units are pretty nice, but I think it's going to be this kind of ongoing maintenance with an old mill building like that. And I think some of it's been deferred, and they're now under some pressure to make it happen, and we want to support that.
One of the things that I remember from ancient history, and Fern probably can attest, is I think this town went through this with this property once before, where we got hung out for a while. So we definitely want to make sure that doesn't happen when we submit another grant application.
Agreed.
Yeah, to follow up on that, what kind of protections do we have if this, say something goes wrong and they don't complete the project? What's our liability?
Well, I think we would pay very close attention to that in how the project is devised. And so I guess how I would answer that is there are a fair amount of unknowns in terms of what the actual budget allocation would be. So there's $2 million, I believe, that's available in Maine for this particular housing project budget. There's 8 applications. And so the odds of getting $1 million, I don't know that we would. And so then it would really come down to being very careful about what the CDBG budget would be used for. We want to make sure that, for example, if the CDBG funds went in on the early side, soft costs or design, but there was a lot on the back end to be executed, we would pay very close attention to that. And just because we received an award from CDBG, if we couldn't reach a landing with Realty Resources, I think we'll be able to, but if we couldn't, we'll be very careful to make sure that we're in a strong position town standpoint.
My question is more, if there was a problem, would we'd be liable at some point to pay back the money from the bond if, say, the project wasn't completed to their satisfaction?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if I have an answer for that at this point. I think it would really come down to making a good decision with those funds and make sure that we're not in a position where we're in a third position or fourth position and don't have a control over that.
Mr. Chair, if I could.
Yep, go.
So, Brett, I definitely think that, to Mark's point, if we could get a little bit more clarity on the liability, that's the first piece. My ask on this is that the affordable, is it going to be affordable housing? I know a portion of that falls under the low-income housing guidelines and requirement. Are these 14 units, are any of those going to be allocated for that, or is it too early to tell? Is that part of the requirement for the grant?
Well, I think the CDBG is because when these 14 units are converted, the entire complex will be affordable housing. So it's definitely going to be designed to fill a hole in the market.
Good. Thank you.
Questions?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I think in the past, this does, as Don mentioned, there is a lot of history on this building with town because it's been part of the town forever. With that being said, I would think that we'd want to be, if there's any way that we can support this project and try to keep that building better than it's not, because we've seen that building when it's been run down, it's not so pretty. So if we could actually work, and if we have some tools in our toolbox and make the project better and maybe become a little bit better partner with them as we move forward. I do believe they were actually pretty forgiving for us when we wanted to put the sidewalk and get the easements and stuff that we needed when we did our 196 project up there in the village. So again, I do want to echo the idea of everybody else. We don't want to put ourselves on the hook for anything, but yet if we can actually help them out and get some funds available, I'm all for it as long as we're not held liable at some level.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I was just wondering if we could maybe amend the motion as it sits to put contingent on getting clarification on the liability that we would have in the event that there was any sort of.
It's my understanding at this point, there is nothing at this point for the submission that has to go before the June 5th, Brett. And what I would encourage is to go with that and afford the ability to be able to find out that Brett would have a presentation at a later date to council. There's already one component that will be flushed out at a later date, and I would allow that to happen most likely at the next meeting agenda.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Is that a fair assessment, Diane? One more.
Yes.
We see you nodding. Just go ahead one more time.
Yes.
Any other questions of Brett on the topic, guys? Seeing none, Twyla?
So just to make clear, we are voting on the motion as written.
As written, exactly.
Okay.
And the reason being is the fact that I think those details are going to be flushed out. You guys will hear more, is what my understanding at this point, and it allows the application to proceed to meet the deadline. I'm seeing everybody nodding on that, so go ahead, Twyla.
Your motion is to authorize the town manager to submit the Community Development Block Grant Housing Assistance Grant application for $1 million on behalf of designated sub-grantee, Realty Resources Management. So, Councilor Fellows?
Yes.
Councilor Albert?
Yes.
Councilor Colby?
Yes.
Councilor La Rochelle?
Yes.
Councilor Ganong?
Yes.
Councilor Ward?
Yes.
And Councilor Lunt?
Yes.
7 yes, 0 nays, order passed.
Thank you.
Next item, Twyla.
Order 2020-95, the Northern Border Regional Commission, which is NBRC, Infrastructure Grant Application. Do you want me to read the recommended motion?
Please.
To authorize the town manager to submit an NBRC infrastructure grant application for $808,000 and to commit funds to contribute the in-kind and cash match of $202,000 for significantly advanced redevelopment of the Warumbo site for appropriate commercial and/or residential development, public green space, and 110 plus or minus new parking spaces, and to designate up to $200,000 from the downtown TIF and in-kind match.
I'll make a motion for discussion.
I'll second.
Okay, Brett, why don't you give us an overview and we'll go in from there with questions.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I believe that the letter of intent for this particular grant was shared in mid-April. It's changed a little bit there in terms of what the financing is. Northern Border Regional Commission is a pretty unique pool of funds that's well suited for what the town has been working on at Warumbo. The timing is good in terms of where the timing of the work that's been done with the brownfield revitalization. Any restrictions on development have largely been mitigated by the work that the town's done with TRC and the DEP. Randy, who can chime in here whenever he's ready, has done amazing work to open up that site beyond what it's been. So this grant to the Northern Border Regional Commission, which is due at the end of the month, would really be the icing on the cake for probably, you guys would know better than I, but almost a 20-year redevelopment goal for the Warumbo site. It would provide funds at an 80 to 20 match, so the town would have to put up 20% for 80% funding, a pretty significant pool of funds. The idea of the project would be, the design would be fully scoped out and finalized through a community visioning process over the next year. The funds would be available. We would know if we were awarded funds later this summer. There is a 3-year window to complete the infrastructure work. The first year allows us to secure the match. So we have 1 year to secure the match, 2 additional years to complete the infrastructure, and then any deliverables on the grant itself would extend for another 3 years beyond that. What we're proposing is utilities and an access road into the Warumbo site. The utilities, sewer, water, 3-phase power would facilitate really what I've, a plug and play type of development opportunity on about up to 1.3 acres adjacent to Main Street at the intersection of 196 and 125. Now that community visioning process can really refine significantly what the actual development would look like, where it's sited, how it fits with the broader community, and additional 110 parking spaces that could be used to support local businesses and or development on that site. We had a good meeting this morning actually with DOT. If you look at that site, big challenges around the redevelopment, whether it's green space, parking, or mixed use commercial residential, is pedestrian accessibility and the ability to get from the parking lot on Warumbo to Main Street or vice versa. And the Main Street intersection is challenged. ADA compliance is essentially non-existent. It's a tough street to cross. But through conversations with the DOT today about potentially creating an access point from the Warumbo site across the rail line behind the railroad diner, they were open to that. There's some additional work that needs to be done, but they were supportive of the project in general and saw no reason why that crossing of the line couldn't take place. They also had great input, DOT had great input and ideas about how that Main Street intersection could be improved and opened up, remove some of the signage from the rail line that's no longer necessary to open it up, create a nice landing place there for folks who want to cross the street. So, this is an ongoing process. The LDC, Lisbon Development Committee, has been working on it for quite some time. We had hoped, from a sequencing standpoint, we had hoped to have already initiated the visioning process. Because of the COVID-19 disruption, we were unable to meet or to convene folks from the public. So I'll admit and ask for your patience in understanding that this proposal could be construed or looked at as getting the cart in front of the horse a little bit, in the sense that we haven't gone through that visioning process. But I'm confident that this grant opportunity, we can apply for it, and then we have the opportunity, if we're successful, to undertake that visioning process. The town can make sure that what we want and on that site is what we get, and then leverage the money to make it happen. So it's a unique opportunity. We've reached out to partners to make it it's aligned, and how we're describing it is aligned with the local economic development district, which is AVCOG. They've provided a letter of support. Western Maine Transportation Services, who could use that site as a transit-oriented development site where folks could walk from the dense Lisbon Falls area to that area, hop on a bus, go to Bath Iron Works, or up to Lewiston and Auburn for employment opportunities. So it's really an opportunity, as you guys have known and worked on here in Lisbon, that could really advance the town's goals around economic development and community access to the river. This is a unique funds, and so we're asking you for your support to put an application in.
Mr. Chair?
Can I just for a sec, Don?
Sure.
Brett, do you have that picture?
Yeah, let me see if I can get a very conceptual site plan up from Oliver Associates on the screen here.
I asked Brett to actually share this, and one of the other things that I've asked him to do, because this is one of those gateway properties that's right at the start of Lisbon, that's going to have a lot of public input. So in that, what I've asked him to do is any communication on this topic that's actually, as it proceeds forward with the LDC, is to add the council to this through the process. So that said, Brett, why don't you acclimate us to what we're looking at here and follow up with some of the key points that you actually just walked us through on the infrastructure.
Sure. So the first thing, so you guys can see that okay? You can see my cursor?
Yes.
Yep. Excellent. So right here is Canal Street. Here's the railroad tracks. And this right here in the top right corner is the intersection of 129 or rather 125 and 196. This at the top of the screen here is the railroad diner, and the railroad tracks here that extend behind there. The DOT parking ride is up in the left corner. So the way that this is laid out largely is driven by the land and the conditions of the land, particularly floodplain. And you'll notice that this area up here is where the former mill sat. That's relatively dry relative to the rest of the site. And so that's why the developable parcels, you'll see they're currently subdivided into 4 separate lots. That's why those areas are identified for development. This access road here provides access to those parcels. The utilities will be buried underground, so a developer, the right developer that the town wants, who shares a vision with what the town wants, would have utilities at a plug and play reach. So it's really using public dollars to facilitate redevelopment of a brownfield site, and reutilizing it in a positive way that drives the town forward. Here's the parking lot here to the left. That's 110 spaces, give or take. We had a very preliminary discussion about this at the LDC meeting on Wednesday, and some good ideas have already been shared. The public or the rail crossing that would access this essentially to the back of the railroad diner, and then beyond that to Rusty Lantern. And if you'll recall, in front of Rusty Lantern, roughly at the intersection of Union Street, there is a ADA pedestrian crossing there, as well as access to the trail network on Davis Street. So when we get crossing the rail here, it's a hop, skip, and a jump to other parts of town, including the areas of 196 up heading towards Lewiston that have some buildings that I think, there's an opportunity there that are currently underutilized. So this could drive a ripple effect of economic development throughout downtown. But it's important, and I think it came out of the conversation at the LDC. This is a conceptual drawing. In theory, all 4 lots in the top right corner could be 1 lot. They could be 2 lots. The town has control over how those are used. Buildings or the actual construction could be clustered on what, if you can see it, lot 2 and lot 3, and the front section of lot 4. We keep hearing great ideas about maintaining the visual of the river from Main Street. And then, some of the input has been the proximity or lack thereof of proximity of this parking to Main Street. This gives you a skeleton of what the land points to as a common sense, cost-effective development scenario. But within that, there are a lot of opportunities to fine-tune, get input from the public, generate consensus on what actually lands on the ground and how it fits in with the rest of the community.
Mr. Chair.
Absolutely. Anybody have any questions on the graphic?
Yes.
If not, you can take it off the screen there.
I do have questions about the graphic, but I think Don beat me to the punch.
Yeah, go, Don.
I just wanted to say, as both Fern and I were part of the LDC meeting, and there was a certain amount of shock value because the picture that we first saw was a concept drawing that had buildings on it, which kind of got me going in a direction of that this was pre-thought out, that we were going to have buildings all the way from Canal Street to the parking lot. And that's not necessarily the case, and it doesn't have to be 2 stories, and it can be moved around. This is a modular situation. The only thing, correct me if I'm wrong, Brett, the only thing one of the things that's really committed is that parking lot that's at the end has to stay at the end. It doesn't mean there can't be more parking, but that parking lot has to stay where it is. Is that correct?
Not 100%. But if you want to put buildings on there, largely yes.
For the best value of the parcel.
Yeah, if you want to get the highest and best value with the land, yes. And I should make one other point too, Don. I don't mean to interrupt, but part of this concept was really around generating a budget for the grant. So what we're looking at is kind of the high-end budget scenario, and we wanted to make sure that when we applied for the funding, that we had that the number was adequate to meet the need of what the community envisioned. And we didn't want to sort of go with a hybrid or a lesser development scenario from a budget standpoint, and then put in an inadequate budget to the grant. And great news if we were to get a grant and then not have enough resources to fulfill the vision. So this is conceptual, but it's also with an eye towards a budget that will cover whatever the town wants to do.
So
my point, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Don.
My point was that there's a lot of visioning, as Brett has said, there's a lot of visioning that has to happen after we're accepted or submit the grant. And the visioning can involve different scenarios for those 4 lots and how they're configured, as he said. The main thing that we drew from that meeting was that everybody wants to be able to see the river in some form, in some way. And so I would imagine envision the visioning process to include something along those lines.
I think that's fair, Don. I will share my observation at this point because I appreciate you actually bringing the point up. I saw the other graphic as well too, and I will apologize to both Diane and Brett who've heard my opinions on it quite specifically. I asked for this graphic to actually be shared because it is a blank slate showing lots, not a rendering of what could be there, because the could be is actually way down in the weeds at this point and is less cast in stone versus this here, which actually visualizes what we intend to be able to do for our grant matching funds, which, as I understand it from you, Brett, is basically the infrastructure for the road and the parking lot.
Correct. That's correct.
All right, I heard Mr. Albert.
Yes, so my ask, and I heard, Brett, you kind of touched on it a little bit already, was that if we're submitting for this grant, and we're submitting a bigger vision so that we can hopefully procure more funds, if we decide to go away from that plan, are we still on the hook? Do we have to, once we're in there, are we locked into this? Or could we go ahead and just for giggles, lot 1 and 2, say we decide to move the parking there? So we're eliminating 2 lots. I'm just saying, and we moved some of the parking, we split it, instead of having a 110 back in the back, we split it up and have some parking up in the front too. Are we married to this vision, if you will?
It's a great question, and a big part of what would make our proposal competitive is what the outcomes are. So what's the deliverables? And in this case, what we would be looking at is job retention and job creation. And that can be achieved in a couple of different ways. Development on these lots that we see could supply some jobs. I hope that we think about it that way. The parking lot that provides access to Main Street and the businesses on Main Street are a job retention strategy. By creating this parking, we're facilitating customers to those businesses. So I think, and this is a point we discussed very briefly the other night, was that this could be a 20-year play if we think about this and what this could mean for 20 years and how we define the catchment area. And I would encourage, not only is Main Street an important or a key part of that catchment area, but as I mentioned, I think Route 196, within a 10-minute walk of this area and connectivity with the trail and Davis Street with a 20-year perspective should also be considered part of the catchment area. So that's kind of the broad answer. To go down a little bit deeper in the weeds, I had a conversation with the program person at DECD to understand what our best play was from a competitive standpoint. The Northern Border Regional Commission targets underserved and distressed sort of rim northern New England states. And they differentiate match criteria based on the county and the economics and the demographics of that county. Androscoggin's considered a distressed county, so our match requirement is only 20%. You go further south and it gets higher than that. We're considered distressed, so we can go 20%. However, is that 20% going to be competitive? A lot of the projects that they reference and that they celebrate as case studies and examples are more like a 1-to-1, 50-50. So I came at your question, Councilor Albert, a little bit different way from a competitive standpoint, and I asked the point person, okay, we can ask for the full 80, but if we don't get it, is it just you get a rejection letter? Or if you like the project, but you can only do 400 grand, let's say, which would be great, is there an opportunity to have a conversation then and scope the project and buy some time to raise some additional funds or adjust as necessary? And my takeaway was that I think we should shoot for the moon and then have the opportunity, hopefully, to have that conversation and adjust to the resources that are available, or look at additional resources to supplement it, or based on the community vision, maybe tamp down the vision a little bit and reduce it in scope, thereby requiring fewer Northern Border Regional Commission funds. So it's in some ways, you heard it earlier on the housing grant. The more I learn about these federal programs, the big ones, you put the application in, and there's even if we're awarded funds, there's a project development phase where the real due diligence happens, and you go through the numbers and you really vet all the different impacts to it. So I think we should define the catchment area broadly, and I think that we should be flexible based on what comes out of that community visioning process. If we can't get Northern Border Regional Commission funds, and they're not a great fit for what the town wants to achieve, we can say, no, thanks, we don't need it, it's not the right fit, we'll take these other dollars. So this is a starting point, but there's still plenty of flexibility to adjust and adapt as we learn more, both from what funding's available and from the community.
So another follow-up to that would be, in reading the packet, and I may have confused it, so forgive me if this doesn't line up. I thought it was going to be about $1 million, is that right? And we were going to match 20% of that?
Correct.
And so of that, my understanding is that we could take the existing 150 that we've already dumped into the place and count that as part of that match. Is that right?
There's 52 or so that Randy's gonna put in later this month or later this summer around the fence. We'd have to come out of pocket for the balance of 150. Funds that are invested prior to the project commencing are not eligible expenses. However, we'll make the case and we'll demonstrate what the town's already put into it to hopefully strengthen our case, but those are not eligible based on timing and sequence to be matched.
So that being said, then the 200K would come out of the TIF monies?
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure I understood that there's no community push here. I mean, there is in theory, but that's fine. Okay, thank you.
It seems like a great use of TIF funds.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Alan, you're muted.
Any other questions on the graphic, guys?
Yeah, I've got a question. Well, not really on the graphic, but
If that's not the case, then go ahead and take the graphic off, Brett, and then go ahead, Mike.
I mean, I just feel like we're really getting the cart before the horse here, and that we haven't had any community outreach at all in what we want to do with the site. And this design really presumes a lot of things. Even if you say we can move the lots around, but I mean, I kind of disagree with the whole concept there, building this big access road in and dividing it all up into commercial use. You basically have no space left for a park, which is what it was sold on to the public as far as I was concerned. And now you've got parking lot way down at the end where no one's going to have, people aren't going to want to park way down at the end of this parking lot and walk all the way back up there to the Main Street. I think that's just, I don't agree with this design at all, and I think you're really going to be locked into something. But I can read on the documents, once you take the money, you're required to go with a fairly large commercial use there. And I think that we're presuming a lot to getting locked into this before we've had a chance to get the community's feedback on what people want to actually use this for.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Please.
The Mark, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I mean, as Brett and Diane knows, I'm probably one of the bigger critics of different plans on this, but with an open mind, I mean, I'm excited that as a council, we're here talking about land that we own down by the river called the Rumble site, because I mean, we've been trying to get this for years, right? So, I mean, any aspect and any avenue that we look at of getting ideas, I don't think is wasted.
I just don't want to get locked into something.
Yeah, no, and believe me, I sat with Brett today and just make sure that we're not locked into anything. And if you go to the, if you actually Google this grant and actually look at some of the previous things they've done, I mean, we can modify this a little bit. I mean, you could actually get the grant just for the parking and the bus and the, access to the river and green space, but it probably doesn't actually put us on a high level of probability of getting the grant. I think you got to have as many hit as many goals as you can to off the checklist as far as to get the grant. I myself, as to the other day, probably had a pretty a look that we probably shouldn't move forward with this, but looking at it a little bit more, looking at some of the research, what the grant's done in the past, and talking to Brett, I don't see us going with the full the layout that's there. I think there's a lot of questions with it. One thing that layout does do is actually give the council what council asked for. Many meetings before, the council really put it out to Diane and to Brett and to the staff to actually lay out what could be done on the property, and there it is, right? I mean, that is really, if you're looking for a big commercial setting, that's your opportunity. I mean, once you take out all the setbacks and floodplains, it is a little more limited than what it shows, but yet in a sense, it does show what could be there. So I think we have achieved the goal, if nothing else. As Brett said at a meeting the other night, if nothing else, we encourage a lot of dialogue, right, Brett?
Yeah, stir the pot a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So stir it up a little bit. I have no problem myself going forward with the idea of just reaching out for the grant. If it's not costing the town any money, and we can actually say no at any point. And even if we get the grant, we can just say thank you, but we've actually decided to do something different. To me, the most important part of it is the community having an opportunity, as Mark said, to voice their concerns and actually really kind of portray what they really want there. Can there be a happy medium? I mean, I initially didn't think we'd have any commercial anything on that site, but if we can actually do it really nice, I mean, let's put it this way. So if LL Bean came to us tomorrow and said we'd love to put a little adventure outfit there where we actually did paddleboarding down the river. We'll do it in LL Bean style, and it's going to be great. We could have a great opportunity, an outlet store there. I don't think would any of us actually say no to that if it was just a small piece of that, So I think we got to be careful for saying totally no. But yet on the other hand, we got to make sure the community has the input. And going with what Mark was saying, we want to make sure that we represent what the community wants, because that's basically what we're supposed to do, right? As a council, we're supposed to represent what the people in town want. So I think Brett's done good work. I mean, it's one of those things where, if you told me to repaint that, I'd have a totally different looking outlay, but it is what it is. I mean, that is the opportunity that is the ultimate opportunity if you were just looking to sell it as a commercial site. Do I like to see it that way? Probably not. I envisioned a long time ago, back when we were looking to try to get this years ago, that when we actually had what kind of led to the 196 standards is the people around us saying that Lisbon is that town you just drive through as fast as you can because there's nothing to see. We actually always wanted to have something when people drove through town that they say, wow, that looks like a really neat spot to stop and check it out. And I don't want that to go away. I mean, I really still want that spot. So when they roll over the hill by Crafts, they come down by Frank's, they say, wow, maybe this is a great place to stop, take a break, get a bite to eat at Frank's, a Flux, walk around the community, check out our trail. So I don't think we want to lose that aspect of it. And some of this layout probably does, but yet I think it can be modified. Brett, one question. I was just looking through the paperwork again when I got home. Is there any reason we didn't actually add the idea of actually connecting the natural gas to the site? Because that would be huge if someone was coming into a project, and it is on 196.
It's a great point. You can look at that and see if that would have any impact on the budget. If you dig into the weeds, there is some contingency funds, and depending on what the ultimate build out was, there might be some efficiencies that could be gained to carve back some budget space to do just that. So I think it's a great idea.
I mean, I think if someone was coming in to do like a small brewery, a brew pub, in that back number 3 spot, but close to 4 spot, that'd be one of the things they're looking for, right? Water, sewer, 3-phase power, and proper natural gas would be a big highlight there too, as far as the cost factor. But again, it's one of those things where number one, I think the community needs to have their input. I think we need to go through that stage, and if we go through that stage and the community wants green space, place to have picnics and stuff like that, and that's what everybody tells us, we can flush this away. But I mean, at the end of the day, if we can find a happy medium and try to get our economic guy that's just trying to make our town more viable, one thing I can't say is Brett is not sitting home on his couch. He's definitely doing the work for our community to try to bring this stuff forward. So I think Don had some great points, looking 10 or 20 years out, if we had a parking lot a little bit more visible by the road. And it sounds kind of earth and crazy today, but actually charging stations, as much as Don's thinking about the future, we know within the next 5 or 10 years, we'll be driving more electric cars and we'll be driving gas cars. That's just the industry's telling us that. So the idea of someone stopping and charging their cars and walking up and getting a bite to eat or taking a look down the river is not really unreasonable. It's happening. It's just not happening in our community at this point. So I guess at the end of the day, I'm saying that I'll support this as long as we know that we're not locked in anything and we can pull the plug on it at any point.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
If the one thing to consider is visioning input from the community. This project could use all that money in one 12-story, 15-story hotel on one section and the rest of it's park. Whatever the visioning brings. If the visioning says we don't want to use this money at all and that we want to all park, so be it. But as I understand it, this gives us an opportunity to have that visioning and to apply for something and to make the best use of the property. And I know an economic development person always comes through with what's the best, highest use for the property. And so those are our challenges, but this will allow us to compete.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
So my thinking on this is that we, whether we like it or not, the optics have been that we've not been the best with business that's already established here. And one of the things I know when we talked about acquiring the Rumble Mill property was trying to alleviate some of the parking issues that were directly associated with the businesses on Main Street. And I don't really feel that this representation does that. I think that by putting, there's plenty of parking space, 110 of them, but location-wise, it's to think that business or folks are going to stop and then walk all the way around for access to Main Street seems a little short-sighted to me. And also the layout itself. If we're thinking about some of the things we've gained, to Fern's point, we want to be cautious about how we're going on. I understand all the things that have been outlined with saying we don't have to take the money if we decide to take a different vision based off of what people say to us. But I'm also going to go ahead and, I heard talk of green space, and I'll tell you right now, my thought when we were getting ready to buy this, and I thought I heard that from my counselors as well, is that the last thing we want to do with this property was make green space, because when we looked up at Graziano's lot, that felt like it was a little rushed, and we ended up going to a green space model when we had a business that was ready to go in there, and there was some heartburn associated with that, right or wrong. But the idea was that we had an opportunity when we missed it to have a business that was going to generate tax revenue, and we put in a green space. Rightfully so. I'm sure that green space is going to be fantastic when it's complete. But I think that I haven't heard anything about green space in that spot. I think it would be a huge disservice unless the community came in overwhelmingly and said, "Hey, we want a park there." Then you go with what the community is asking for. But I'm definitely a little reluctant to vote in favor of this tonight. I just don't feel. I feel it feels rushed. And I'm just not comfortable with that idea. I think that we need to get more input and make some real choices, especially if we want to retain view of the river. I think this eliminates that. And I think what would happen is if we catch a little head of steam and a good chunk of this grant comes through, we're going to feel like we're missing an opportunity because we have all this money and grant money, and then we're going to be stuck in this vision, if you will, and we won't be able to back out of it because we'll feel like, oh, we got all this great opportunity with all this capital. And I know that we're talking about, you know, we don't have to accept it, but let's be 100% honest. With the current economic climate and the way it's going to go for probably the next 18 to 24 months, if someone drops a large chunk of change on us to develop an area that definitely needs it so we can attract more business, I don't think we're going to turn away from that. It's just my thought for what it's worth. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I think you're muted. But anyway, I just wanted to say that, again, this is one concept that uses that much money. That does not mean that we cannot vision the whole project differently. We can put parking, to Fern's point, at the beginning, and we can also put parking at the end. And we can put buildings with the current situation as it is. This requires us to do visioning at the end. So we're going to miss an opportunity if we don't do so.
But I would echo going with that. I've heard a couple of different views here. Clearly, the one piece, because I sat with Brett for an hour after work before tonight's meeting as well too, because I had the same reservations. I saw the graphic, I saw the renditioning for the drawing. I thought that's great, but it's toxic as heck for a gateway community right in the front. When somebody sees that, and the perception becomes that it actually is where we've already landed. When I know I'm looking at 7 of you on screen, and at best there were 2 of you that probably saw that rendering at the LDC, and it's going to come back and backfire on the guy that's actually gotten us to this point. So again, what I asked him to do is anything on this project to be able to make sure that the council is copied, to be able to make sure that as we vet through this process and we start talking about the infrastructure for what this is going to mean, is that we're at least aware to be able to speak to that, because I think Mark's point is valid associated with that, and I'm clearly hearing in this that this is a rendering of what the infrastructure is going to be. Our match is going to go towards that infrastructure that's going to be in this property. 50,000 of which we've actually already committed to Randy in fencing alone. Where we go with the next phase of it could be folding out. One piece that I would say that's actually the reason it's before us again is the deadline for this grant is June 1st. So take that for what it is. Do I expect that this actually is one of those votes that goes down 7-0? Absolutely not, because it is a project that is going to have a lot of very vocal opinions, because this is a gateway property that's right in the center of our downtown, or one of our downtowns. When I was talking to Brett on this, I equated it to, if it was in Lewiston, this is our Mill 5. This is everybody is going to have an opinion on this, and some are going to be very personal. Green space is going to be where a lot of folks are going to land. Do I think that's the way it's there? I don't know. I know that one thing that I actually listened to when we went through the original dream board for the comprehensive plan, communities that actually develop upon the river are the ones that actually survive or prosper. I believe that. So where we go with this, I look at it as a really good opportunity.
I have a question.
Yep.
So reading the memo on this, it mentions on here that the funds at this level proposed would not be appropriate for green space and parking alone. However, it does go on to say further that final development site plan to apply for NBRC funding. Where was it? Project using NBRC funding, the result must be significant development on the buildable area of the site. So if we're just gonna, according to that site plan, we're just gonna put the 110 parking spaces in, are we going to be able to do any significant type of development, or what significant type of development are we looking at doing for those buildable spots to comply with this grant? I mean, to me, putting in utilities isn't significant development.
Brett, can you relate, because I asked a similar question, if I'm getting what Cassie's asking, what is our matching funds for an eligible expense to meet that criteria?
Well, 20%, so 200 grand, if that's what you're asking, Alan.
Right, but what can that be on those developers?
To meet your criteria.
To meet the criteria.
Well, so the criteria, I think, is really around economic development, and there's a few different measurements for that, but really for what we fit and for where that job site is, or for that buildable site, it's really around job creation. That's really, or job retention. That's what we would be sort of on the hook for. And the parking, like as I mentioned, I think you can make a clear case for how that parking supports job retention on Main Street. Clearly in the short term, as we've talked about in the past, with hopefully when it happens, the DOT project on Main Street, there's going to be a need for overflow parking to mitigate that. So that's part of the sort of the stage here, is to get that short-term parking. But I think, if you look at that parcel and look at what the state, the regional economic development plans are, and if you look at industry trends, as Alan sort of alluded to, folks want to live in places where they can walk to work, where they can walk to local amenities, coffee shop, brew pub, restaurant. They want that experience and to be able to go on a trail and have all of that experience in one spot. And that Lisbon has a great start to that. There's a lot of great amenities in Lisbon. But you think about somebody who's going to drive for an hour or so, and I agree, Fern, I think Lisbon's in a great spot to pull over and take a break and look around. But is it something that's going to attract somebody from 45 minutes or an hour away? I think from an economic development strategy, you need to package up an afternoon, for lack of a better way of thinking about this, where you could drive from Portland to Lisbon, park your car in a spot, and then walk down the trail, see some interesting art, go up the street, check out Beechcraft and Sippy Cup, and check out some neat, some cool retail, and then hit a coffee shop or a pub and get some food. And Lisbon, I think, is 3/4 of the way there. But there's an opportunity here to create experiences that will attract people. I think there's an opportunity here to create an opportunity for sort of niche businesses, like a boutique engineering firm that works on unique projects, and they want to attract talent. They want the right kind of engineer to come work for them, and they can provide an office space looking at the river, walkable to downtown with affordable housing. Lisbon, I think, is crying out for a craft brewery where folks will visit. Lisbon, I think there's an opportunity, think about it big. There's an opportunity for a sort of a clinic there, for folks to have walkable, accessible healthcare that can use a small space. There's a development on Washington Ave in Portland, which I think is impressive and could fit on lot 2 as sort of a visual one-story development. And they have old storage shipping containers that have been set side by side and transformed into maker spaces where folks who are doing crafts that they sell on Etsy or online, they make them there, and folks visit there and purchase them. I think there's a really unique opportunity to develop that site in a way that attracts people, that creates spaces for local folks to have livelihoods, to add amenities that the neighborhood can really benefit from. And if it's done correctly, there are still opportunities for enough green space to have concerts in the park. It would be denser, folks would be a little bit tighter, it wouldn't be the sprawling spread, but there's an opportunity to do a lot on that site that would not only be valuable in its own right, but would complement the rest of the downtown area. And I think that will lead to job creation and job retention, which is the basis of the grant.
Cassie, does that answer your question? Okay.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes, please.
I have another, while Randy's on the screen and everybody, maybe after this vote, just bring up another subject about the parking down to the Rumble site that may not have a direct relation with this vote that we're going right now. So after, if we can have a discussion about that after the vote, or we can do it now, it's really up to you.
You brought it up, go for it.
All right, so there was a discussion that I'm going with Norm's discussion he had earlier about the idea of downtown parking and maybe the more, I would say, acute need of parking maybe than 2 or 3 years out. So Randy has an opportunity where he's going to get a lot of crushed or ground up asphalt that makes a good temporary parking bed. The original thought was to actually take the crushed material that he's going to be talking about later and spread it out down on the kind of the flood area where the last parking is, and kind of cap it over with the reclaim. Another suggestion that we had that, and it is reclaim, it is something you can move around after, is to take Randy when we get to reclaim and actually level out the area where the mill was and actually have just a safe parking there, so we're not worried about rebar and stuff. So we could actually have a temporary parking that's a little bit closer to the intersection and offset Main Street. And I'm not sure, Randy, how quick they're going to have that material out there, but I assume that you probably could prep that area fairly quickly to actually to lay the reclaim down in that area. Just when they tore down the mill, there's some pretty rough stuff, some rebar and stuff hanging on that site that if we put a couple inches of reclaim down in a, say, area where you can park 70 cars, we could do that quite easily and have access to it, which actually would allow some extra parking on Main Street while we're doing this. So we're doing this, next to 1 or 2 year subject. So again, it's one of those things where I think we, as a council, may have to give some direction to Randy and the folks to, where we're going to put the reclaim, where it's going to be used the best. I'd love to think we could get it down in a short period of time, going along with the discussion about maybe some stuff on Main Street this summer that Brett was working on, and we discussed the other night about the idea of trying to help the restaurants on Main Street by allowing some space on Main Street for them to come outdoors. It just, unfortunately, takes away some of our parking. So again, it's just one of those things that I think we need to talk about at some point of, if we're going to get the reclaim for the swapping for the idea of using them allowed as stage there, where do we put the reclaim, where can it be best used for right now? To me, I think putting it up where the mill was and making a suitable parking area there for whatever use may give us an idea of what people use for parking there and just make a safe location to park. That's my point.
Mr. Chair?
Sure.
So, and I think, Fern, I think that's a fantastic idea. The only thing that I would say that I want to see, rather than it being temporary, I want to see something a little bit more drawn into the plan. If we were thinking that, and it doesn't have to be massive, whatever we feel is the right amount of parking there, but I think it's important to reflect that what we've worked with the businesses on Main Street for is to try to come up with a plan to offer additional parking. It's always been a sore spot. So I think we have to, if we're looking at this plan that we just looked at, the graphic there, I think we have to be mindful of that and develop some sort of parking on the front end of that, right off the canal. I think that makes the most sense. And if we could see something like that in a plan, if we wanted to submit for this grant, I know that I could probably support that, but it would have to be something that's a permanent part of the plan. I don't think a temporary solution is what we're looking for while we're developing the final vision. Then that means we could potentially pull that back and have that parking go away. And yeah, I just don't think that's such a great idea. But that's,
and with that being said, also is the idea that Brett, with his meeting with DOT today, actually, Brett actually got what I felt from what Brett was saying is he had a really good talk with DOT today, and that the idea of if we did do some parking up in that corner, that we may, in the short term, I'm not talking tomorrow, the next day, actually put a paved walkway over the railroad tracks, where the railroad tracks are, to actually mitigate the idea of that cluster on the corner. And Brett, you can actually, hopefully I'm not putting words in your mouth, but it's one of those things where maybe on the short term, we could actually put some parking in a little bit safer access without spending a lot of money, just to see how that actually does offset how the downtown uses it. It would be a good case study, if not.
If I could, just real quickly, going back to the memo, I think added a section to that memo based on the LDC meeting last Wednesday. And Norm, it's great what you said, Don, you were all over it. There seems to be a consensus emerging that lot 1, if you go back to the graphic, could be used for parking and could maintain that view of the river, and that the development could be clustered on lot 2 and 3 and 4. So I think we're already starting to hear it in a lot of different ways, to the point where even that development on lot 2 that abuts lot 1 could be 1 story, and so it keeps that open view even further. So I think in the short period of time that you all have had the chance to look at this, and again, I'm sensitive to that, and Alan will for sure do a better job of copying everybody. Inadvertently didn't do that last time, but make sure that everybody's in the loop on this really key conversation. But I think there's already sort of a consensus emerging, and so I find that encouraging, and I think there's an opportunity there.
Mr. Chair.
thank you, Brett.
I was just going to say, I don't know how deep that first lot is, and I was just thinking that if we could conceptually take half of it into parking and go from there, just as a concept to submit. I don't know if you have time to redo that drawing a little bit, but that might make it better. Right, to the consensus we seem to be coming to.
Yeah, I think that you can, Mandy Oliver, the engineer, drew those lines there. I think from a retail, we can sell 4 lots. Let's sell 4 lots instead of 2. But those are really sort of arbitrarily drawn. The key thing to think about is that top right, almost a rectangle there that abuts the railroad tracks in the intersection. That's the footprint, and we can do whatever we want with that footprint. That's really where the building should go. And then the parking lot, the big parking lot, ended up where it was at, just building off of that. But there's no reason that, as we've talked about, that this could not really be designed in a unique way with skilled people that could make this complement what we want it to complement, and really sort of accentuate that site and how it fits together and how it ties into Main Street. And I think there's an opportunity here as well. There's a meeting on Thursday night, the community team for the Main Downtown Center Entrepreneurship Grant. There's some resources there. We could potentially pull a few grand from there and piece some other work together to get an architect to do some pretty unique plans. And I think there's an opportunity. Fern alluded to it. We had another conversation at the LDC meeting about the potential. There's some work to do, but the potential to either allow businesses to move out into the sidewalks and perhaps even close down Main Street. I think that, if we can be focused and move forward relatively quickly, we can tie a lot of these things together. And what I mean by that is we could get some renderings or some images in front of the public relatively quickly to start to refine what we want these designs to look like. There's an opportunity with the summer to take advantage of that. So that's where my head is at, is to understand that there's public input. There seems to be a consensus emerging, but that we need a tight feedback loop so we can iterate and get this design done quicker, so that we can land on 2 or 3 that are sort of final and put those out for review. I think we could tie it all together in a really timely way that Mark addresses your concerns. Norm builds on what you have in mind. Don, with charging stations there on that lot 1, that's an attraction. There's a way to tie this together, I believe, and I think the opportunity to submit the grant leaves that door open to be able to turn it around quickly after we reach that consensus.
Any other questions? Any other comments? Seeing none, Twyla, can you call the roll?
Yes, Councilor Ganong?
Yes.
Councilor Lunt?
No.
Councilor Ward?
Yes.
Councilor La Rochelle?
Yes.
Councilor Albert?
Yes.
Councilor Colby?
Yes.
Councilor Fellows?
Yes.
We have 6 yeas and 1 nay. Order passed.
Thank you all. Next item, Twyla.
Order 2020-96, Information Technology Services Agreement.
Just a little background on the current agreement. We signed that with the IT Kings doing business as Roundtable Technology back in October of 2016. Since that time, they have not increased their annual amount for service. And if you recall, when we went through the our goals for this upcoming year, I wanted to go out to bid for IT services. Number one was because I expected an increase, which I had a discussion with Nick on. Since the COVID-19 and everything that's been happening, I went back to him and asked him if he could keep the same amount for an additional year, and then we'd go out to bid next year, and they agreed to do that. The contract is a little bit different. It's called the Premier Managed Service Level. We're still getting the same amount of service as we did in the other contract. The only difference is cybersecurity is included, and there is still an out clause that we would have to provide them in writing if we decided we wanted to get out of the contract before the annual date expires, because this will be an annual contract that we'll have to negotiate at the end of each year.
Make a motion for discussion.
Second.
That is a huge contract. It's amazing. I was reading through it. There's a lot of stuff I don't even understand, probably that Norm would better than myself. But the one question I have is they actually have the $3,800 a month, which is what we've been paying. That's pretty straightforward. But the $250 per call, as far as for after hours, do we have any history on what we actually pay a year over and above that $3,800 per month?
We haven't had to pay them anything.
So it's basically,
Yep.
we haven't had any circumstances.
Typically everything happens. We deal with them during the day. I can remember one instance, I think it was on a weekend, it was with the dispatch. They ended up having to call the emergency number, but we didn't get charged for it.
Okay, so it's been pretty straightforward. I was just wondering if you had some type of tracking on how much extra we were paying, and all right, good enough for me.
Diane, the question that I have is the difference between the plan name from what they have this year and last. Is that something at the parent level that they've changed the name, or what's
you mean the Premier Managed Service Level?
Yeah.
The IT Kings?
Why the name change if it's the same level of service? That's what I don't understand. That makes me think.
Well, in their new contracts, they've got different levels, and the Premier Managed Service level is the same services we're getting now, which was going to be an increase when I talked to Nick earlier on in the year.
Okay, so he's brought the price down to be able to be consistent.
Exactly, to keep us for another year. Yes. Yep.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
No, please. I was going to defer to you anyway.
So my understanding, and then Diane, you already highlighted, is that we're getting everything that we got before, except now they're throwing in cybersecurity as well, because that is part of this particular contract.
Exactly, yes.
We would have paid additionally for the cybersecurity,
Right.
which was outside of the scope last time. So then that being said, I heard you say it's an annual renewal, whereas we were fortunate when we ended our contract in 2016, because that was a month-by-month piece.
Mhm.
So we weren't locked in, and we could bail out at any time, because
Right.
the contract stipulations of having to give them a notice were no longer in play because the contract had ended. So now by renewing this contract, we are obligated to give that notice. They can't change pricing, correct?
That's
They're
right.
locked into this price for the entire
For
12
the
months. And
entire-
they can't come at us 3 months from now and say, here's your 90-day notice, we're going to go up. Is that
Right.
correct?
That's my understanding, yes. They're gonna hold this price for a year.
Okay, so that being said, I think this is a good lifeboat for us because it allows us that 1-year opportunity to maybe try to eyeball other players in the game. So when we go out to bid, we'll hopefully, especially with the current climate, we'll find some competitive bids by this time next year. So.
Right.
Is that a motion, Mr. Albert?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I'm good.
Good. I need a second for Mr. Albert's motion, please.
I'll make a second.
I have a first and a second. Any other questions of Diane on the topic? Call the roll, Twyla.
Okay. Counselor Colby,
Yes.
Counselor LaRochelle,
Yes.
Counselor Albert,
Yes.
Counselor Lund,
Yes.
Counselor Ward,
Yes.
Yes.
and Counselor Fellows.
Yes.
There's 7 yeas, 0 nays, order passed.
Next, Twyla.
Order 2020-97, the purchasing policy discussion.
I'm gonna just frame this and send it to Diane. You guys are seeing the grandson of my review, Kayla's input, and Diane's. The key talking points that I would interject here is we had different levels that I didn't think that were actually relevant in this time at this point with what we can do through either Munis or putting a threshold out there for anything above 10,000 to frame it with Diane for a formalized bid that I could clearly see that we've been lax on, that we've addressed in the last 3 or 4 months with most recent bids. And secondly, from the 2 previous items with Brett at the beginning of this dialogue, anything associated with federal or state money, it would not pass the criteria for a purchasing policy for use of any federal or state funding. So it addresses those key components as well too for anything for grants or MDOT if that project actually goes kind of whatnot. So Diane, take it from there.
So, there's several changes in here, and part of that, Alan helped out with, and I had a part in it, and Megan did. So I noticed some questions over the, through emails, and I don't know if anybody wants to, there's quite a lot of changes in here. They're all good changes, and I think the questions came from Dawn regarding the, how to word the informal request. You want to talk about that, Dawn?
Yeah, I had 2 points, but the first one I just read today really isn't a point at all.
Okay.
The second one was just, I was just being a layperson, when I go and hear the title 3 quote bids, I'm going, is that a bid, or are we talking about something? So I just wanted to rephrase that to make it slightly different and say that what I wanted to say was a award of purchases requiring 3 quotes should be made by department heads instead of 3 quote bids. And in that context, in the document here, 3 quote bids are a type of bid, and so it was just a little confusing when I read it.
Yeah.
Don, I appreciate that because that is a huge point, is when you're talking 3 quotes, it is not a formalized bid. So I agree with that completely.
And the other one is Fern's point. I don't, I'll let Fern make his point.
Yeah, I think Alan probably seen an email today too. I'm not sure. I think I sent it to everybody. Would be in the past the idea of I totally agreed with the idea of having a local 2% advantage over an outside bid. But again, it was actually taken out in this this rewrite. I would just
I can tell you why.
yeah, the federal and state part of it, or just as a unit.
That is you can't do it for the federal level. It has to be, that language is directly from that federal passage to be able to have it be consistent across all bids.
Yeah, so could we change that to actually have, so if local money, so if we're repaving the town parking lot or actually having work done at any level locally, I mean, I always thought that 2% was a good incentive for a local person to actually maybe compete to an outside vendor, you know, but.
No, we absolutely could. To that point, if the fact is that there is no local or no federal or state funding, we could go with 2% as an exception to that in that regard, because it is. I get why it was there. It's just we have to be able to approach it the other way if it does trigger those. So by all means, I can support that because I know why it's there. I've heard it from local businesses, and the fact that the criticism that I've heard of recent is the fact that is more about the fact that we weren't consistent in how we were applying our policy in some of the loopholes in it. So if we took that one away, I think it would be a criticism for the current rewrite. So I don't disagree with that.
How do we actually change the writing of the policy then? Do we have a separate line that basically states the idea for a local bid using local dollars, or actually triggers the idea of the 2% for preference for local contractors or businesses?
I think right where it's actually, the language is actually in place, if there are no federal or state funding, that a 2% for in town that was actually there could be reintroduced.
Right, and we can just add it, as long as there's no state and federal funding, we can keep that same.
Yeah, instead of the strikeout that's actually right below it, you could reference that again, absolutely.
Yeah, provided no state or federal funding is involved.
Correct.
And 2% isn't huge, but at least gives us an opportunity to say the local person does have somewhat of an advantage to actually bid a very compatible, you know, bid. And, you know, it still comes down to the idea of it needs to be a compatible, you know, quality and price. And it just gives them a little bit of a local incentive, that's all.
More so as going with our dialogue that we had today is the fact that, as you and I and Diane talked about, is the fact that looking at what is done locally, so we're not discouraging anybody from that bidders list. The fact that we should be seeing what the resources are locally to be at least considered. Anything else on the topic? This one informational, and or is it actually working for a vote with that one revision, or the two revisions?
The one that Dawn made also. Yeah.
Right. They're both good inclusions for sure.
Yep.
Do we have a motion on the floor?
No,
I don't know. Is it discussion only at this point, Twyla, or is it there's something?
it is discussion only. You can make a motion if you like.
I'll make that motion, that we approve it with those additions.
Okay. Is there a second?
I would like to second it if you don't mind. It was in that regard, it's in my wheelhouse, so I would actually take the collateral hit for everybody.
Right.
Are you ready for a vote?
Yes, please roll call, Twyla, if there's nothing else.
All right. Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
Counselor Colby?
Yes.
Counselor Ganong?
Yes.
Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
Counselor Ward?
Yes.
Counselor LaRochelle?
Yes.
And Counselor Albert?
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays, order passed.
Next item, Twyla.
Order 2020-98, the Warumbo Mill Site Rock Crushing Bid.
You're up, Randy.
Diane has all the figures that came in for rock crushing. I believe the winning bid is for $19,950, which was St. Laurent Construction. I think we got two prices back. One contractor backed out, saying they wouldn't have enough time or the manpower to do it in a timely fashion that we need it done. Utilize the reclaim. That being said, I'd like to go move forward with that and get all that material crushed so we can move on with leveling that out and getting the rest of that cleaned up and put that project behind us as far as my work to be done there.
Randy, saying they had no reservations to be able to meet the June 30th deadline?
I have not heard that they have. Diane opened them. I was at a pre-bid for the paving, so.
Okay. That was the June 30th was clearly specified to St. Laurent, Diane?
Yes, it's all in the bid specs.
Did anybody happen to notice the change in the bid specs for this contract in the packet? I want to, if you did, thank you. I mean, by all means, what I would say is the content that you're actually seeing here will address a lot of the concerns that were raised. That proposal form that's actually there is going to be key because Randy and or Diane or the department that's actually doing the bid can be as specific as they want on what they want in there. I just did one for a mobile message board and I went through schematics that it's asking for X, Y, and Z. Is it compliant to this? Yes. Is it not? No. And going through the warranty information and the contract terms and all of those nuances are spelled right out there. This one with a construction, it actually establishes the times of work and all of the things to be able to formalize this. So yeah, it'll be a definitive learning curve as everybody gets up to speed. But once you start standardizing these, it's going to be so much easier for Randy and or Diane or the department to administer these because it's going to be, what did we do the last time to be able to help with that? And again, if you haven't seen bid specs on that, by all means, reach out to me because if I haven't seen them, I tied in the 10 or 12 people around the state that I actually just reach out to them and I'll get it from my predecessors to be able to help with that. So by all means, I appreciate that effort with this because it should be a lot easier to actually move these forward when we greenlight something for you, Randy.
I just want to say thank you to Alan because he provided a lot of information for us to put these specs together, and we're still working on other bid specs and we're tweaking them depending on what the job is or what the project is. And when you see the paving bid specs at the next meeting, that's even more comprehensive than what's in this packet.
Randy, how did your pre-bid go for paving?
Pre-bid went fine. There wasn't a whole lot of questions. I will say this, a lot of the companies wanted me to do, I'm going to say wanted me to do their work for them and give them all quantities. I've done paving in the past. I've estimated paving in the past. I gave them what I thought the quantities were just based on the lengths of the road, the width, but when it comes to shim and overlay, they can better tell if a road's going to need 3 inches of shim on a shoulder or an inch to get their own quantities. Mine was basically just a guideline. The problem I saw is that, like I said, there's a few companies out there that reached out and said, well, to compare apples to apples, I want you to give me the quantities. And then I replied to them, I'm like, no, that's your job to go out. This was just a suggestion of what I thought we would need. But I would advise you that you all look at the jobs and you estimate quantities and that'll do what the town is expected, of them to do and that we approve of the job they're doing. If it's grossly off, then I'll probably go back to them and, and say, your tonnage is way off, compared to the other 4, let's say. And that's all I can tell them. I don't want to be held accountable and liable with my hands in the fire saying, well, you only wanted this many tons. Well, like I said, I only use it as a guideline.
Right, you don't have
I
a
can
reason
give
to
you-
do a lot of, by way of comparison, the fact is that we rely on a lot of math in Lewiston that you don't have the access to an engineer to be able to develop. So in that regard, my understanding is what you're paying is you're gonna pay per ton anyways. So as long as the person actually has got a decent estimator, they should all be coming relatively in the same place. So nobody loses in that. It's, you're giving me a price per ton to be able to do it, and if somebody comes in and underestimates it, that bid is gonna stand out just as much as the guy that overestimates, because it's not gonna be even in the dooryard for the rest of the estimates. What I was more referring to is, what was the number of contractors that were there? Is there a lot of interest?
We had 5 contractors show up, and then St. Laurent got added. I didn't even know they were in the paving industry.
Yeah, that's new January. I just relayed that to Diane just for that reason. So by all means, it was new. They're actively going after it for that line of business. So by all means, that's good.
Larry Warren already reached out to me, and I gave him my cell phone number. I said if he had any questions, because he wasn't at the pre-bid, and that for him not being at the pre-bid was not an issue. But if he had any questions, to give me a call, I would go over them with him.
Cool. It's I'm liking that I'm hearing 6 contractors are interested in what we're actually looking to put down this year. So that's huge.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question too, going back to the crushing of the?
Yep.
If I may, if you were done, I don't want to stop you where you're at, but so Randy, with the crushing of the material, I assume it's going to crush it, pile it, and then we're going to have some good, probably 2-inch gravel. I mean, I'm not sure what it's being crushed down to, but something that you can actually lay out as a base.
Base gravel, it's going to be about 3 to 4 inch minus, so which is great for base gravel. But then I've got that new screen that we purchased for last fall, and I can screen 2-inch minus, so where I can use the bigger gravel and riprap, so to speak, in other areas. And then I've got probably about 200 to 300 yards of just rock that I'm going to crush down to, I think the 8 to 12 inch mark for the, for shoring up of, let's say like the walking path down by Frost Hill that's fading away. I'll be able to have enough product to do that and other projects in town where we have road washouts.
So with that being said, I mean, if we actually take that product, crush it, level out the area that you actually have piled in right now, which is where the parking lot, so to speak, would be according to the plan that Brett put out. Is there any loss or anything if we were to take that reclaim and use it up in the other corner? I mean, that reclaim isn't really going to be used to stabilize that area at all. That would be more just for leveling. So if we were to use it up in the upper corner for a temporary parking or go with Norn's point to try to establish something to be more permanent, is there any problem do you see any problems with that, actually doing that to try to get a respectable parking area that wouldn't cause any problems with us using that product?
No, I mean, the only problem is that if you mix it in with regular dirt and soil, it's not going to compact as good. But I mean, it's good material, and we're not laying down a whole lot. I figured, 300 ton or 300 yards, 300 yards would do the parking lot in the back. So quite essentially, you could do the little bit in the front that you wanted to do, and quite possibly do 3/4 of the parking lot in the back.
I would just like to look into that before we actually lay it all out back, just so we can use a product that we're not paying anything for to try to make that front parking usable at this point.
We'll just have to make that determination, because that will have to get leveled and compacted before we put the material on, because part of the agreement with Allstate was they're going to run it through their paver to make it look really good when they're doing their cleanup in August. So if that's the case, I got to get a dozer in there and level that out, compact it, and get it ready for them to do what they got to do, just like I was going to do in the parking lot in the back.
Is it, Mr. Chair, is it unreasonable to have Randy put together some type of plan or layout for that and come back to us for the next meeting? Would that give you enough time, Randy, if you were to give us a proposal for that, what would cost and what it would look like? I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, if we if we were able to establish, you know, even 35 to 40 parking areas there for now, just to actually have some start to it. Norm, is that what you're thinking? And you think that would actually be, that doubles the sum of parking on Main Street now, I would think.
Yeah, I think that goes to show good faith to the businesses there on Main Street that we definitely are committed to the idea of adding parking. So, I mean, that sounds like a good first step to me.
Is that something doable, Randy? Could you put together some type of plan to bring back to us?
Yeah, I can do that.
Only if the chair wants.
So what I'm hearing in this regard, the only thing that we need to do is, to Diane's point about spending curtailments, is that I'm hearing rental of a dozer. The only other pricing is Randy's time for his group to be able to do what they need to do. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd have to do, you know, if we're going to do that, I'd coordinate it so at the same time I'd rent it for another. If you rent the thing for 3 weeks, you might as well rent it for a month, because what they want per week,
right?
After you get past the third week, you pretty much paid for the month. So at that point, when all the material's crushed, and I get that machine down there, I can level out the area. Which now you understand that there's an area in the middle of all that that's already paved. So I don't know how much of that you want to. If you want to go from Canal Street all the way to the paved area, and that way it's almost doubling your lot size, or do you want to just do the 35 car spot, because then that's not really taken up. There's going to be like a reclaimed area from Canal Street up to accommodate 35, 40 cars. Then there's going to be a gravel spot, and then it's going to go right to pavement, because there's pavement there already. Or do you want to just do reclaim all the way to the pavement? Now you've got 3 times the parking spot.
Mr. Chair, I think I'd probably have Randy look at that and give us a better idea of what he thinks.
Randy, we're not going to do your job for you. The fact is, we would defer to what you think makes the best value.
I think it'd look better, you know, just explaining that to you.
Yeah.
I think it would look better if you do the whole front side reclaim, and then it goes right into hot top. And then worry about the back parking later.
Make it happen, Scotty.
We can do it.
Right on. Okay, so I need a motion if there's no other questions on this topic.
I'll make the motion.
I need a second.
I'll second it.
Call the roll if there's no questions, Twyla.
Yes, Counselor Albert?
Yes.
Counselor LaRochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Ward?
Yes.
Counselor Lund?
Yes.
Counselor Kanan?
Yes.
Counselor Colby?
Yes.
And Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
7 yeses, 0 nays, order passed. Did you need another motion for the parking, for the reclaim?
I'm not hearing anything that actually needs to do that, other than allowing Diane to be able to work with Randy for the rental of the dozer. Everything else is going to be presented to us at a later date.
Okay.
For the benefit of time, and if Randy wants to depart us, Randy, can you give us an update on the Grassy Square for how things are progressing there?
Yep. What we've done, Dennis had St. Laurent come in and finish their obligation as far as their contract. They put the walkway in, they spread the loam. They've cut the edge for the parking lot to be paved. I drew in and raised the catch basin so everything matches. Then we just had it hydro seeded today. For the next few weeks, we'll water it. Either the rec department can use their tank in the back. We have a tank out back of our dump truck that we can use to water it, you know, at least every other day, so we can get good growth going. Our reasoning behind getting it done right off before we got the estimates for irrigation was to get at least something growing there before it's just weeds and it looks like another vacant barren lot. If we can actually get the growth coming up and take that fence down, we'll get the rec department to start maintaining that lot. And it's really nothing to get irrigation put in, because they have a machine that goes down, it digs the line, buries it at the same time, makes very little impact on the lot. you know, irrigation will definitely have to happen before we get into the July, August months, because it's really dry underneath. It's nothing but sandy gravel. It's gonna suck the moisture right out of that dirt and kill the lawn, but, we'll try to and get good growth going now. As far as the fence and everything, I think we're gonna, as far as I know, and Diane can chime in if she agrees, that we're gonna hold off on that with the sidewalks, which are, according to Mandy, we've got feedback from the contractor, and he's come up with a solution. He's working with a couple other contractors to give better insight and give us some places to go look at that has the same application for sidewalks with the same use that ours gets. So that's where we're at so far. Once those things get worked out, it should move right along. I think we're actually getting quotes for the hot top through the people who are bidding, also, you know, on the roads, see if that's something they're interested in.
We added that to the project scope for the pavement bid, guys, just as we did a change order to the scope. So we know it was in there to be able to afford Randy the best pricing, because if when you get a $475,000 order, if it's a $50,000 parking lot, you should get better pricing than the parking lot just by itself is the intent.
Right. That's what we're at so far.
Any other questions of Randy on that topic?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Sean.
I just one comment. For Randy and for Ray, I had a constituent ask me last week about potholes, and it really is more significant than a pothole. And I put the request in by email to Ray, and all of a sudden it's fixed today. So congratulations. Thank you very much for attending to that. It may have been perfect timing, I don't know, but anyway, it's done.
Yeah, some of these things are in the mix, and what we do is, you know, we've got other projects, so we'll do patching and paving a day because we're only on 4-day work weeks. So if we have other projects we gotta get done, we'll do that and we'll pave on another day. So, try to get through everything as soon as we can.
For the sake of time, I know I said Randy one more time, but there's another item. I'd like to, Diane, could you give us an update on opening our locations and where we stand and what the plan is? When we get to the solid waste facility, and at that point, I'm done with you, Randy. I appreciate it. I'd rather have you be an active participant on that.
Yeah.
So currently we're working on plans for our different buildings, which would include the MTM Center, the library, the town office, and up at the solid waste. Our intent is to open on June 1st on a limited basis, where we can abide by whatever direction the governor is going to have at that time. And I understand tomorrow there's going to be a lot of guidance coming out. I haven't worked on a plan with Mark Stevens yet because we're waiting for the guidance to come out. I talked to Randy today about opening up so there are no restrictions other than the safe distancing at the solid waste. And that will still be in play. And the only thing we were working out is how to accept the money, and we've found a solution to that. And I think if that doesn't work, to Alan's point, that maybe we could, for the month of June, waive the fees that we would normally collect if we have to. I think we've got a solution, but in case that falls through, if we could just waive the fees that 1 month that they would normally be collecting up at the transfer station. The town office here will be open on a limited basis. There will not be access to the whole building from the public. On both this building and the library, we're not going to have any access to the restrooms because there's no way we'd be able to sanitize those after somebody used them. So that's going to be off limits. I'm going to have everything in writing, and just as soon as I get it completed, I will have it, send it out to the public and also to the council. There's going to be a limited amount of people coming into both buildings so that we can continue with the safe distancing, not only for the customers, also for the employees. And we're gonna do our best to service the public the best way we can as we move through the next couple of months, and hopefully by the time September comes, a lot of this will be lifted.
For the measures for specifically the library or town hall, anything for the measures for the number of people to be in compliance with what we can have in the facility?
So at the library, because they have 2 floors, they're looking at a 10 patrons maximum at one time because of the 2 floors. They can manage that. In our building, we're going to look at no more than 5. That will allow two people at the front counter because we can't have any more than that because of the safe distancing. That will allow 1 at the clerk's desk, and also 1 at code enforcement and 1 at assessing.
How are you enforcing? How are you enforcing?
How are we enforcing it?
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to have a monitor, but we're going to have a lot of signage, and we're going to ask people to be respectful, and we're going to be motioning people in. They're all going to have to stand out in the hallway. We're going to have no more than probably 3 in the hallway. We're going to have them enter one door and exit another door, and they're going to be told they need to stay there until we wave somebody through. That's the plan right now. That may change. That may not work. We got to play it by ear and see how it works.
Sure, I can.
And then in the library, there will be somebody at the door.
Okay.
Diane,
Yes.
will employees who face the public be wearing masks?
It's not going to be required because we have the plexiglass. That's the other thing. We're going to be having plexiglass at all the stations. That way they don't have to wear the masks. If they're in a situation where they're not behind plexiglass, like if the person that's doing general assistance, then yes, they will have to wear masks.
Okay, it sets a good example, I know that. And I saw a situation today where there was virtually a line of customers in that corridor trying to get service, and I saw an employee, when I was looking at, pretty close to somebody in no mask, and I thought, okay, we're all guilty of that, but we should probably be more conscious of masks.
Yeah, as it stands right now, unless you want to do something different, I'm not going to make it mandatory that the public come in with masks. It's going to be highly recommended, and that's going to be on, our all our communication and on our signs. But if they can't do the safe distancing, then it is going to be required.
Topic of fees of the solid waste, if you don't mind. You've heard what my suggestion is, because I think that if we can't move forward associated with that, and it literally comes down to cash at this point, I think that that's a viable option, is that, like we did with brush for Randy associated with that, if that's the one restriction that's still floundering, I'm of the mindset that it's immaterial at this point. With everything else that's gone on, the fact that I would just as soon waive the fees for that month, even July if we had to be able to relieve the pressure that Randy's staff is dealing with at that facility.
You take it's not so much the pressure of the money, but if you put that out there that we're going to accept OBW and everything else at no cost, the pressure is going to be on everybody and their uncle is going to be dumping their stuff. And it's going to be on us trying to haul it out.
I don't disagree, because it's going to come in from everybody else, because the word is going to get out and it is going to be insane. So
it's going to be insane. And then where do you draw the line when it's all the way backed up to Capitol Avenue, people trying to get in there? And, we've already had issues where, people are getting upset and yelling, vulgar language and everything else. So it's just going to heighten everybody's excitement, going to load their trucks and trailers and expect to dump it off, and that's not going to happen. There's going to be a line, and I'm telling you, it's going to be all the way out to Capitol.
But what I clearly heard for what Diane communicated, that you guys have at least a workable plan for the June 1st time frame to be able to address cash to be able to proceed as is.
It'd be very easy. I mean, it's just a matter of if they dump a sofa, put the cash on the clipboard, we'll have another clipboard, we'll exchange clipboards, there's your receipt, thank you very much. And it'll be done at the shack, not inside the building, so it'll be in an outdoor environment.
Right on. Everybody good? I think it's gone on, and I know we've heard some very specific concerns. Yes.
Yeah, I do have one thing for Diane. It's something a little off of this particular topic, but I want to just chime in real quick. With the rec department opening up for their summer programs, just thinking about that, the school staff, particularly the custodians, if we're going to have the rec department open and the kids in there, I'm wondering who's going to be doing the cleanup, because that's not something that I think the custodians will be available to do. They'll be doing, they take a gang approach, I believe, to cleaning the building. So I don't think we're going to have resources, or nor should we ask the school to absorb those costs. So it might be worthwhile, Mark is kind of thinking about and mapping out what their programs look like for the summer, to be thinking about what are you going to use your staff to clean up and disinfect as the program wraps up for the day.
Okay, no, good point. Thank you, Norm.
No problem.
And I remember correctly, Mark gave me a brief update on a lot of that. Some of those logistics have already been discussed between he and Rick. So by all means, flushing them out for general consumption in it.
Are we,
I'll lose power. I'm going to see if I can plug this in real quick. Hang on, folks.
are we looking at still doing the day camps?
Yes, my understanding, Mark actually approached Rick Green, and rather than one day camp at MTM or any one specific center, he's looking at 3 to break them off into smaller groups.
Well, my only question with that is, I know Lewiston today announced that they're not doing their summer camps. And where most of the camps go on daily trips, or, you know, twice a week or however many times a week they go. How is that going to pan out where most places are already closing?
He's not looking at anything like Funtown or any of the other standard trips. He's more looking at outdoor-based activities with things like Beaver Park or those kind of places to meet what we can do accordingly, because everything he's hearing from the parents is that with everybody trying to get back to work, he has a specific group of people that he knows he's trying to meet that need. However that need needs to be met may be radically different than years past, but he's at least meeting that need.
And the governor is coming out with her guidelines tomorrow for the summer camps, the summer day camps. So we're going to wait and see what those are too. We just got to make sure we can abide by those before we can do the program. We think we can, but we just need to see what those are.
I'm not hearing anything that's a showstopper. I appreciate you guys actually getting into that, because we're getting closer to that June 1st, and I know it's getting a little more personal for a lot of folks associated with that, and everybody's waiting to see what it actually means with PPEs and personal protection and choice and that type of stuff. So I appreciate you guys' effort on that topic.
Thank you.
All right, Randy, get out of here. Thank you.
Mom, stay safe, everybody.
Peace out. School committee, with Norm's got technical difficulties. He's coming back up with power.
Don't we have 2020-99?
Right.
You're right. I jumped. Apologize. I heard.
Okay.
Thank you, Kathleen Swallow.
Order 2020-99, the itinerant vendor license for MacDaddy's Mobile Cuisine. We just want to report that he's ready to operate. He has a letter from Randy Crafts for 501 Lisbon Street that he'd like to have where he wants to put his mobile unit this year. And he wanted to withdraw his application to use the boat launch at this time.
Okay, so is it informational? Do we need a motion?
You need a motion to approve the itinerant vendor license, yes.
for the location.
I'll make that motion if the correction needs to be from our paperwork that it's going to be done at the craft location.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Ready for a vote? Okay. Counselor Ward?
Yes.
Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
Counselor Gannon?
Yes.
Counselor La Rochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Colby?
Yes.
And Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
And Counselor Albert?
Council Albert will be joining us in a second. Let's let that one go 6-0.
That's right.
He's
We have 6-0. I'll just make the record he's not present.
Right.
All right, next item, our other business, council committee reports.
Let's start with planning and we'll circle back to Mr. Albert.
Okay. The planning board meets on the 28th, I think it is, a week from Thursday. And there are a couple of cases out there that, one of which is a solar farm on Ricker property, and the other one is a wood lot on Summer Street. But other than that, it hasn't met yet, so I don't know what the outcome is.
One of the topics on that, the code enforcement officer reached out to me, being the secretary for the committee. He is going to have an in-person meeting versus virtual because of the nature of the public hearings. He's had specifics on that. He should have spoken to the chair by this point to make sure that the protocols are explained to him and we're in compliance with what is there. But given the nature of the public hearings, thought it most prudent to be able to do so.
I asked him about the attendees, and apparently I probably will be attending, so we'll see what happens.
Perfect. Let's go back to school. Mr. Albert?
Yes. So I tell you that communicated with the school committee chair, and they continue to whittle down their budget. They're doing the best they can to try to understand which nook and cranny they can shake and make cuts to. And they still are trying to maintain the needs and have pretty much targeted all wants and bringing those out of their scope. But I did get the understanding too that there's some placement out of district. That's something that we can't, some students that we can't take care of here with the means that we have. So those are pretty significant costs, along with some additional, the standard old benefits and salaries. So they're doing everything they can to try to understand that. Reimbursement for some of the lunch, the meals, I should say, that we've taken on. While I know that we talked about this last meeting, that's something that there is a pretty strong indicator that they will be reimbursed down the line, but we still need to budget it for this year, and that's going to be something that it's there, and there's not a whole lot we can do about it. But there's an opportunity somewhere down the line to at least recoup those dollars. But they're going to continue on. I know the next meeting that they have scheduled is for next Tuesday, and it's going to be more of the same as far as budget talks and how they continue to look at costs and how to reduce them.
Okay, thank you, sir. LDC?
I think actually Brad actually gave a good overview of what our meeting was. I'm not sure when the next one is, but I'm not sure if it would be able to be a live meeting or not. We are talking about doing some outside events where we can have some discussion. So I think I'll just leave it to that as what it is, and hopefully Brett can actually inform us when we get close to the next one.
Conservation, there's nothing to report for tonight. Recreation? Mute.
A lot easier if I unmute. Nothing to report at this time.
Okay. County, nothing either. They have an emergency meeting. I didn't see what was on the agenda. Diane, did you happen to catch that? Because I didn't.
It's a supporting opening of something. Opening of parks and things.
Okay.
I think it was nothing about RV parks, campgrounds.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. Library?
I think Diane already briefed us on what we had going on with the library.
Water.
The
The Water Commission either had or will have a meeting shortly. It was an in-person meeting in their office. I did not go, but they're going to send me the minutes.
Okay. Diane?
I just have one other thing. We finally got the draft commissioner certification of completion of the remedial actions under a voluntary response action plan. That's the VRAP for the Warrumble Mill site. So we've got the certification. It's just waiting for the commissioner's signature. And it is going to have a declaration, an environmental declaration, which we all knew about. And it's the extraction of groundwater at the site is prohibited without the express written permission of the department. And the department must be notified before any excavations can take place on site. I sent them the report from the remedial action that we took on the Warrumble Mill site when we did the asbestos removal and other work down there. And the result is this long-awaited letter that we, that's really a good thing for Lisbon to have for that site.
Okay.
And that's it.
Question to Diane? Thank you. Diane and/or Brett, I know there was some initiative that was actually taken at the last LDC meeting for things that we're looking into to be able to assist local businesses as we start to reopen. Can you maybe recap what we're actually considering to be able to pursue on some of those topics?
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity. I think you'll notice other communities are looking at opportunities to allow businesses to deliver services, but still respect social distancing. And so we're looking at similar opportunities here in Lisbon. Probably a 3-tiered approach is what we discussed as an initial strategy last Wednesday at the last LDC meeting. The first and sort of most acute is to figure out the right approach to allow restaurants to and retailers to do service on the sidewalk. Something that's sort of relatively easy to implement. So to that end, we've had conversations with fire and police to understand their concerns or considerations around some of that. We've taken a straw poll of the rest of the businesses on Main Street to get a sense for what they're interested in, what their needs are. So hopefully on June 2nd, next council meeting, we'll bring a plan for that as an immediate step to allow restaurants and retailers to move out onto sidewalks in a safe way. Above and beyond that, we also discussed the potential to close down Main Street 1 day a week as a hypothetical approach. And to that end, a goal of a mid to late June sort of soft launch where potentially Parks and Rec or volunteers could put picnic tables out on Main Street. Public Works could close it down in the afternoon. And that would offer us an opportunity as a community to assess the benefits, to assess the risks, if there's any challenges that we can learn from. And it's kind of a low cost approach for the local businesses. And taking that straw poll, there was some concern about the cost associated with sort of gearing up to be able to do business on a closed down Main Street and whether or not that investment would generate an appropriate return to justify it. So a soft launch with community resources coming into play to test the concept in late June is sort of a baby step in that direction. And then based on the learnings on that, potentially a more polished, promoted, and detailed approach for early July when there's more confidence in the weather, potentially shutting down Main Street and even looking at things like a beer tent or open carry for alcohol from the restaurants. So risk to understand, cost to understand in terms of staffing for Public Works and the police, but we want to look into that. And if the council will indulge us, hopefully make some recommendations on June 2nd.
Mr. Chair, if I may, if people can really understand the concept that we do yearly, it'd be kind of like a Merry Main Street without the snow. So the same type of shutdown, just in the evening, so we're not actually disturbing businesses, but that type of theme. If that's what we're looking at.
Brett, the question I have for your timeline on something for plan for June 2nd with the June 1st key date for businesses to be able to start reopening. Is there anything that's going to be impacted that maybe we could assist with now, or at least empower you to be able to pursue now to be able to address it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think in talking with the restaurants, due to the social distancing, they can open up for seating on June 1 and probably can only put half their tables at that point. So that's going to minimize the amount of employees they can bring back and minimize their ability to generate revenue. That said, I want to do it right and needed a little more time to fully understand all the rules. We have inquiries to the State Department of Economic and Community Development. A big thing that was made clear, I think, at the LDC meeting was, quite honestly, the importance of alcohol sales to a restaurant, a big piece of their revenue that is. And so I think it's worth having a good plan to share on June 2nd with the idea that the restaurants could then pretty quickly turn around, and if we had a positive vote and a solid plan that they understood in advance, could turn that spigot on June 3rd to put the tables out. Spoke with Chief Leclerc and Chief Hagan today, and they would be willing to meet with the restaurants and help them understand any kind of concerns around safety and traffic flow and those type of things. So I think at the risk of rushing it, I think have more confidence putting a proposal that's sound on June 2nd, and at that case, the restaurants would have lost a couple of days of business, but at least then they would have the confidence that the plan was sound and they could continue to use that plan for the duration of the summer.
Is there anything from police or fire's perspective that actually is running against anything that you actually are considering at this time?
No, their response was very positive. I think that they are going to look at common sense things like fire, not blocking entranceways, making sure that there's enough space for ADA movement on the sidewalk. If we get to a point where we do move forward closing down the street, which I hope we do, they would have some questions about how the street was blocked off and being careful and anticipating any kind of crazy things that might happen, like somebody, driving their car onto Main Street, and just minimizing the risk essentially. But they were overall very supportive, both professionally in their roles for the town of Lisbon, and I think also privately as members of the community. They see the benefit and want to be supportive.
Sure. Anybody else on the topic, please? I think it was a good initiative because I've heard the grassroots efforts from a variety of different communities, both Lewis and Auburn, Brunswick. You've heard them. So us being able to consider the same for the people that we represent, I thank you guys for your effort.
Thank you.
I just want to say too that I received an email from Zach Henderson from Little Rich Farm, who was very supportive of this as well, closing down Main Street to help the businesses.
Appreciate it. Department
Street, here we come.
Yeah, sure. Go, Don.
I said Church Street, here we come.
Yeah. I'm liking the beer garden thing from the library down. It's neat to see that actually played. I never really would have thought that actually had any traction whatsoever, and it still may not. But the fact is that at least we're not categorically dismissing anything for even consideration at this point, because it is strange times.
I was looking at some articles in the paper, and I believe Rockland is planning the same thing with alcohol, as is Portland, so somebody's doing it somehow.
Right. Well,
Going up and down the Androscoggin, that'd be all right too.
No, not really. In Hollowell, they have an event called Swinenstein. It's actually pretty cool if you haven't been. So in that regard, I've seen it play itself out. So it can be done depending on what you want to put the resources to.
Hollowell's Adirondack chairs on their deck is famous, and I don't know if you had the opportunity to stop by there and have a seat, but I highly recommend. It's a great experience, and I would love to see something like that develop and land on our river trail. It would be fantastic.
There you go. There you
go. Department head reports. Anybody have a question? Read them. Thank everybody for their efforts associated with this in strange times. I appreciate our staff. Next item, Twyla, with appointments, I guess.
Order 2020-100, the warden for July 14th, 2020 election to appoint Rick Roberts.
Make that motion.
The man is everywhere, so we can't get away from him. I need a second.
Second.
All in favor, Ricky again.
Let's do a roll call.
Yes.
Councilor Albert?
Yes.
Councilor LaRochelle?
Yes.
Councilor Ward?
Yes.
Councilor Lunt?
Yes.
Councilor Ganong?
Yes.
Councilor Colby?
Yes.
And Councilor Fellows?
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays. And Councilor Ward, I just wanted to mention today that the Secretary of State's office, Matt Dunlap, produced a YouTube video that he would like municipalities to share. And I just posted that to our election website in a couple of places to let you know that you can visit there and look at his video. He's encouraging people to vote absentee for the July 14th election and gives some really good advice and some tips.
When are those available for us locally, Twyla?
They will have our absentees around June 12th. So 30 days prior to, we'll send them out, but you can order or ask for your absentee at this time. You can fill out an application for an absentee ballot. You can call us and we'll fill one out as a phone request, or you can go to the website online and electronically request your ballot, and all of that's available now. We have about 100 requests already.
Twyla, Mr. Chair, Twyla, the absentee votes will not be able to be cast in the town office, though, correct?
I think you'll be able to come in with social distancing, the 6 feet, distance will still be maintained if they want to. I think we're not encouraging a lot of that. I think that Matt Dunlap's office is, suggesting that it's easier to do that by mail, but we are discouraging it.
Okay.
Be able to do that.
Probably better.
Go ahead, Mark. I'm talking over you. Go.
Yeah, I'm saying it's probably better to do that than to stand in line on election day when you're going to be exposed to a lot of people.
The wait time is expected to be longer on election day. We would be able to only have 50 in the building, but that's minus our election staff, and they still have to be 6 feet apart.
The point that I was going to make is the fact that there is a protocol that Twyla brought me up to speed on, and the fact that handling of absentee ballots, returning them to her, she's your person. Anything else actually violates the chain of custody associated with that. So there are pretty stringent rules to be able to play. So returning that ballot, it's best to actually get it returned to her in the appropriate to be able to make sure that ballot is counted properly.
We did order the box, the drop box that will be specifically for absentee ballots. So people will drop them in the drop box. And we will go out and take them out on a daily basis, and we will look at that box at 8 p.m. election night and wait before we do our totals to be sure we've included all absentees prior to 8 p.m.
It's a pretty sizable deal, especially with it coming into an election year. Let's just leave it at that. The more Twyla and I talked about what I heard was actually going on in Lewiston, being a FEMA person for us, applying it to her, it opened my eyes. It's a pretty sizable deal that it's hard enough to coordinate a presidential election. So thank you, Charlie.
Welcome.
Next.
Communications.
Council Communications, yes, who's got something? I've been that guy to place my 3 items elsewhere in the agenda, so let's move on if I'm hearing nothing. Next.
Audience participation for new items?
I just checked my email, I saw nothing. Brett, on your end?
Have received nothing.
Good file.
So then, there are no executive sessions. The order 2020-101 to adjourn. Roll call vote. Let's make a motion first.
I'll make
I heard Cassie 20 minutes ago.
Okay.
I guess I'll have a second then.
Okay. Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
Counselor Colby?
Yes.
Counselor Gannon?
Yes.
Counselor Lund?
Yes.
Counselor Ward?
Yes.
Counselor La Rochelle?
Yes, and I win the 9:30.
Yeah, no. That was why I heard from Cassie 20 minutes ago.
Oh, I was going the over the whole time.
Counselor Albert?
Yes.
7-0, order passed. We're adjourned.
I thank you all. Have a great night.
Good night, guys. Stay safe.
Right.
Bye.